It is 27 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. I understand it's raining in Lagos, Ayo. Is that correct?
That's an understatement. It's not just raining, it's pouring. It's, first of all, good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. It's 27 degrees in Lagos, by the way. However, I don't know, it feels a lot different out there because as at 6:30 going 7, the sky was clear. But by the time I got on the road, on my way to the office, I had to put on the light to see road, as we say in Lagos. I had to literally put on the light to ensure that I can at least navigate my way, and it hadn't even begun to rain. By the time it began to rain, it was windy, it was really, really heavy rain. So there is no umbrella you would have used to cover anything because the rain will investigate your body and touch it. So it's been, and then added to the fact, Mark, that earlier today, this morning, somewhere around the toll gate, I wasn't able to investigate it personally, but the information that I got was that somewhere around the toll gate, there was a roadblock. Some heavy-duty vehicle, fell on the road, blocking the highway, and there was no way anyone could go anywhere. As at the time, as at say 7 o'clock, going 7:30, the traffic had tailed back as far as Secretariat, and I don't know how far now. I hope the issue would have been resolved by now, or at least a way made so that people don't get to their destinations on only late hours this morning. So that's the situation report in Lagos as at this time.
You know, Ayo, the interesting thing is that the rain that fell on your way to work, you'll be surprised that it did not get anywhere around Oroshoki or even parts of Ikeja, you know. I recall that my last trip to Lagos, the pilot had told us, it was just 2 weeks ago, the pilot had told us that, oh, there was some weather disturbance, and as such we had to hover around for a bit, you know, until the weather cleared, that it was raining heavily and he couldn't quite land. And then we landed and then everywhere was dry. So he had to explain to us that, guys, it was actually raining. I promise you it was. Yes, it didn't get to the airport. So do not think I was making up excuses. And lo and behold, Ayo, I had to make a trip that night to 3rd Mainland Bridge. It was raining heavily on 3rd Mainland Bridge, but that rain did not rain in Ikeja, did not rain on the island, but in between.
One thing that I can tell you,
it certainly was raining in parts of Lagos. So
one thing that I can tell you about
believe your story. It's just that when you said that's what's happening in Lagos, I'm sure some Lagosians have been wondering which part of Lagos is that, because it didn't get to my side. But nonetheless, if you happen to be in Ayo's side or around where Ayo passed through this morning, that is the situation. And he says it was so dark, he had to use his headlamps. Would you believe that? Incredible, incredible. We really need to take our climate scientists very seriously, Ayo.
Telling you. But, you know, what I can tell you is this, the kind of rain that I saw this morning is not the kind that doesn't go far. As we normally say, I assure you, this one would have covered quite some spaces, some extent in Lagos, because it was so heavy, it was dark. Anyway, wow. Let's move on to some other things this morning.
Indeed, and I guess we can start with the issue of the accident, because this is no laughing matter. While, yes, the weather can make us smile, especially when you look at you know how strange it is that heavy rain should be falling around December. We also know that December is a time when people usually have to be on the road for all manner of reasons, activities. It's not for joke that they call December dirty, you know, dirty December loaded already. And so when dirty December starts, we have to tell people, even though we need to be careful at all times of the year, we need to take particular care in December of lives and property. So Speaking to the safety issues which you noticed on the road this morning, I think it's something that needs to be prioritized. The road safety, we know that they usually start a campaign in the Ember months. I do not know how big a campaign they have mounted this time around, but they would need the collaboration of all other road safety agencies, particularly those of the many states that we have. So we're hoping that we will see safety prioritized. And speaking of safety, one of our guests whom we interviewed very recently, who spoke about his wife, talking about Mr. Emeribe, who spoke about his wife, who was a member of staff of the Ministry of Defense, who had set out on a trip, on an official trip to Abuja with her colleagues, and were kidnapped on their way. Some of them have been released because the Ministry of Defense did come out to say that all people, all the 6 of them who were kidnapped were released. But the man continues to ask, where is my wife and that of a friend of ours who, were on that trip? We still haven't seen them. The Ministry of Defense is yet to answer that question, even though, we hear that they've reached out to the family. If that position, if telling the press, telling the media that all 6 people who were released, beg your pardon, who were detained by the kidnappers have now been released, and that figure was not correct, we believe that the Ministry of Defense owes us an explanation to say that that figure wasn't correct, and perhaps they're still trying to get those who are still in the captivity of the kidnappers, or if that is not the situation, if other circumstances have now come up. We believe that the Ministry of Defense also owes the media and the people of Nigeria an explanation on that, not silence. That certainly would not do on this matter. Ayo.
I totally agree with you, Markwe, and I am wondering why, despite raising these issues, chatting about it, and now coming up with an interview about it, we still haven't heard anything. Check online and even Google Ministry of Defense staff kidnapped. The last you would hear was sometime in November. Whatever it is you hear is about something that happened in November. And one of the things that we've seen, Markwe, is that anytime you say that there was an abduction and then there is a release, we see some photo ops, at least to give us some believability that this has happened. I haven't seen any. I don't know if anyone else has. And so if they have been released indeed, wouldn't it be nice to at least see their pictures and bring them before the press that if this has happened, that this has happened? One of the things I also find very curious, and we need to ask them questions, is that the Senior Staff Association, I think, of the senior civil servants of the Federation, they put out a statement some weeks back saying that, 4 out of 6 have been released. And if there is another statement that says 6 out of 6 have been released, the spouses and the children are asking, where are they? I told you, Mark, that the last time we interviewed Mr. Emeribe, after the program, the man was crying. He was really crying in the studio, saying that every day the children are asking him, where is their mom? And I want to believe that there is a lot of empathy, staff empathy by the employers at the Federal Ministry of Defense, and I believe that they should know what to do. It also, behoves, Markwe, while we're talking about all of these things, it is those people who do not have the covers that are vulnerable. So when the president now says that VIPs should have police orderlies and on guard duties with them withdrawn, it is interesting that we are having this kind of, blowback by people who are supposed to ensure that we don't get into a situation where people are being kidnapped unnecessarily. So when I hear a senator, for instance, saying that the kidnappers are becoming emboldened and it is putting our lives at risk, excuse me, you are the employee of the Nigerian people. The people employed you to keep them safe. The person who should not feel safe is the people employed to ensure that the people are safe. So right now, if there is anyone having sleepless nights over the fact that the VIPs have been withdrawn on the authority of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the same is being affected by the police, for God's sake, and even the police have started to go all over the place to ensure that this thing is complied with, then who really should be complaining? There's also another rumor, Mark, making the rounds, that some police officers on guard duties no longer wear uniforms. Now wear mufti, just to ensure that it doesn't show that they are policemen. Well, eyes are looking at you, and I want to believe that the police know what to do. So yes, we have to ensure and follow through with it. It's not the first time an IGP will say, withdraw police orderlies, and they still go back on it. Now it is a presidential directive, and he has reiterated it again. And he has even ordered a committee to be set up. We'll wait to see, Markwe.
It's interesting. I think that, while we show that video and, we put in context what Senator Abdul Ningi was saying, according to him, he said that he doesn't have a problem. First, he was trying to point out the fact that he only had one, unlike many other people that we see, and really it had been abused when you think about it. Almost every Tom, Dick, and Harry had a police orderly, as I said, musicians, all manner of people, the children of government officials. I think only recently it was Professor Wole Soyinka who threw shade at the president's son, saying that the president's son and his and the entourage, or is it the battalion he had guarding him, should have been sent to Benin Republic. I mean, that's to tell you just how many there are that are going about with the president's son. So Senator Abdul Ningi bringing that matter up was certainly to highlight that matter and say, look, it has not been obeyed evenly across board. He says, I only had one. He's been with me for how long? I'm not a first-timer, and if this was going to be done, it should be done equally across board. It's interesting while Senator Abdul Ningi was raising this matter in the National Assembly, the president was at the same time reiterating his directive that no one should have a police order. If you needed security or if you needed extra, because what I heard there was extra. In other words, it would seem that certain cadres of people are entitled to some security protection, but it would seem that there is a number that they're supposed to have. And he says if the nature of your job requires that you need a little extra, you should apply to the IGP, but seek clearance from me. What the National Assembly, the House of Reps, I believe, had said earlier was that there needed to be a distinction between public servants and VIPs, because the president's directive was to VIPs. So I think that in fairness, there needs to be clarity on what precisely the president meant by that statement. And, there have been articles, one I read from Mr. Shegwadeni, which said, Mr. President, I'm afraid, you may not be obeyed. But it will seem that on this particular matter, the president is determined that he will be obeyed. But I think that there needs to be clarity. And clearly, if you are going to be applying this across board, you cannot be saying that senators who are elected public officials cannot have one orderly, yet unelected VIPs, including the president's children, are going about with a battalion of protection from police officers. That certainly would not and cannot be acceptable. So there needs to be clarity in this particular matter. And I think that we can listen to Senator Abdul Ningi on precisely what it is that he was saying.
The upper chamber steadily fills up as lawmakers reconvene on the second day of plenary. One lawmaker quickly raises alarm over the president's police withdrawal directive and what appears to be a selective enforcement of it.
This is unheard of in any democracy. I saw 2 convoys of ministers, and they were carrying lots of security personnel. I have also seen business concern, Chinese and other business concern. Yesterday, with the compliments of orderlies. Mr. President, I have also seen daughters and sons of political office holders having orderlies and having security covers. Mr. President, I have seen singers having orderlies. I cannot ever imagine that a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who has been here for a very long time, only one orderly, and he is withdrawn, and nothing will happen. Like I said earlier, Mr. President, I have no problem, but let it be done across the board.
Since the enforcement of the directive in November, this is not the first time a lawmaker has expressed fears over the implication.
The chairman of the Police Affairs Committee should check up this matter conduct a proper investigation and let us know why is the directive of Mr. President being flouted. And I'm sure we have a listening president. He will listen to us, and by grace of God, he will exempt us from that order, which was given in good faith.
Right after plenary, 20 career ambassadors announced days ago appeared before the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs for screening.
What can be done to improve the situation in our foreign missions?
As the exercise commenced in earnest, questions began pouring in.
There are a lot of issues around the revenue that is generated by our foreign missions abroad that shows that most of this revenue are not remitted into the coffers of the government.
I believe that the Foreign Service is heavily underfunded. If the Foreign Service can get its appropriation, remittances denominated in the currencies in which they operate in, it will go a long way in solving the perennial problems of missions and the tendency for requests for interventions.
We wish you well and congratulations.
So far, 23 of the 34 career ambassadorial nominees have undergone screening in this current batch. Now, according to the Senate Committee, the remaining 14 career nominees are scheduled to face their screening on Thursday, marking the conclusion of the first phase of the exercise. In addition to the career diplomats, the committee also announced that the 14 non-career ambassadorial nominees will undergo screening on Thursday as well as part of the second batch of evaluations. From the National Assembly, Gloria Omezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, that's how it went down on the floor of the Senate yesterday. But suddenly it does appear that there have been a lot of political movement, which we'll be delving into. And this morning we're being joined by former president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Ayuba Waba, joins us now as it would seem that the race for 2027 heats up. It does appear that there is a movement for credible election gathering steam, and a lot of people are wondering, what is that about? Comrade, are you leaving, will I say, comradeship? We're leaving labor matters now to join mainstream politics. Is that what is happening?
No, that's not the issue. All over the world, trade unions and labor have remained a very strong pillar of democracy, and that is a global takeoff. What we are merely saying is that to consolidate our democracy, we must commit ourselves to electoral and constitutional reforms that places power of political leadership recruitment in the hands of the people. To ensure also the health of our constitutional democracy, critical and mandatory electoral reforms are needed before the 2027 election. So actually that's what the whole movement is all about. And all of us know that from time immemorial, trade unions and particularly NLC have played a major role in trying to push for electoral reform. You could recall that the NLC and its civil society allies led a national campaign for electoral reform. This came on the heels of the horrendous 2007 general election, where full results were announced. As we are still trickling into the polling units. You remember the Justice Wole Electoral Reform Committee, which NLC was part of the committee, and it made a very laudable recommendation to set Nigerian electoral parliament on firm grounds. Some of the recommendations you could remember includes a democratic and citizens-led transparent appointment of INEC chairman, which was thrown out then by the ruling party. You remember the issue of unbounding INEC into more manageable and focused agencies and the establishment of Electoral Offences Commission. You also remember the introduction of proportional representation with dedicated seats in the parliament for vulnerable groups such as women, which is now gaining traction. So these are the whole issues, because all of us must be concerned about the health of our democracy, and basically we must play our role. So that's what the group and the larger civil society allies we are pushing for.
So if this is about electoral reforms, what precisely about electoral reforms right now are you unhappy about? Or would I say our electoral act? Because I know that at the end of the day, what this will end up with or end up in is an amendment to our electoral act. We know that that is already up for amendment. Some people are saying we're pushing it too close because 2026 is already here. We ought to have had a situation where the electoral act has been amended. We have elections to experiment it with, especially the changes that we're seeking to make. And then when the general elections come by, then perhaps we will be doing, will I say, finalization of all that needs to be done. But for a number of people, while they're looking at those amendments, what amendments is your group particular about?
Well, we are looking at some of the recommendations, very large recommendations that came out from Justice Wole Electoral Committee report, which was actually thrown out. I mentioned 3 of them. But basically, it is our concern that our belief is that violence should not actually determine electoral outcome. 2, burden of electoral financing needs to be examined because you have seen that money is playing a lot of roles in the electoral process. So certainly the burden of electoral financing needs to be examined. Courts should not also determine electoral outcome. We have seen also in many cases where courts will actually pronounce winners and where people lost, they will say, let's go to court or let's meet to court. So the reform should be that courts will not actually determine our electoral outcome. 2, the issue of deployment of technology, because in the 5th industrial revolution, certainly technology will play a major role. So it is our belief that deployment of technology to ensure that the transmission of results is done in real time from polling units certainly will assist very greatly. And electoral reforms generally will build public confidence in the electoral process. And this is what we are pushing for alongside Nigerians, because you remember that in the last general election, some glitches were actually observed or noted. Even INEC confirmed that. So those are the problems. It should be a dynamic process. And therefore, every election cycle, we should be able to identify challenges and problems, and we should be able to fix them before the next cycle of election. Doing it very close to the election also is not helpful because time is of essence. We are approaching 2016, 2027, 2026 now, and we have less than 2 years actually to the next cycle of general elections. So it is expected that time is of essence, and we should push all those reforms. I think Parliament should actually drive the process alongside with the citizens, but time is of essence. But broadly, those that we think will help the electoral process and certainly will build people's confidence, public confidence, and we then consolidate our democracy.
How high up a priority would you say electoral reforms are for the National Assembly? Because we know that a number of other issues have come up in recent times, matters of the economy, security topping the list. Are electoral reforms really high up the priority list for the National Assembly?
Certainly, that is what we are pushing, to make the electoral reform and constitutional reform, which will go pari passu, as a priority. Because the health of our democracy also greatly will enhance governance. It will also address the issue of insecurity. And also will bring about the issue of development, because the totality of it is that we must actually get leaders that are truly elected. And when you do that, you know that people will actually have a lot of confidence. So basically, I think it's to reset their priority. That's what the group is trying to push for, that they should also prioritize the constitutional amendment and also the electoral reform. The two must go together pari passu, because the panacea for peace is also to have a democracy that is stable, a democracy that is progressive, a truly government of the people by the people.
So if you were to give them a time frame by which all of these reforms and the act is amended, when would you say we need to be done by?
Well, I think they should be able to hit the ground running, and it's expected that before the first quarter of next year, we should be able to see some real progress. And possibly in the second quarter of next year, we should have a new electoral reform so that people will become conversant with it. Even the electoral umpire will now look at it very well. Part of the reform issue is also even the funding of INEC. because, you know, in every cycle of election, we have had the issue of, oh, funds are not released in real time. So we need to also look at all of this. So basically, for us to have a successful election in 2027, all of this issue and the totality of the issues, including the glitches that were actually observed in the 2023 election, all of this need to take place in good time so that INEC can also prepare.
In the wake of the appointment of the new INEC chairman, Professor Amupito, this issue of electoral reforms had come up again because a lot of people believe that the president should not be the appointing authority. But the president did not go down that route. I mean, he was the appointing authority. We heard the Council of State approved it, and then the National Assembly did their own screening and confirmed him. So a lot of people, and people say they haven't quite heard what the president's agenda is with regards to electoral reforms. They haven't seen it top his own agenda, his own priority list. And we've seen before now the National Assembly doing a lot of work on electoral reforms and then passing it on to the executive arm of government, and it doesn't get signed. In the last administration, it took 2 attempts before the president eventually appended his signature to the reform work that had been done. So how optimistic are you that even if the National Assembly were to meet the deadline of the first quarter, that we would see the president append his signature to the work that has been done?
One first is that, as I said, even in 2009, when we actually pushed for electoral reform before we got the Justice Ways, it was not actually easy. It was broadly a campaign led by the NLC and its civil society allies. It was a national campaign for electoral reform. And this was then what actually pushed the then government to have the Justice Ways Electoral Reform Committee in place, of which NLC was a member. And that actually sets Nigeria's electoral firmament on firm grounds. As I said, which you confirm, after the very critical recommendation of Justice Way committee report is the appointment of INEC chairman. Although it was thrown out even by the ruling party then, but I think the conversation have arose again in order actually to give some credibility to our electoral process. In the Justice Way electoral committee report, it was recommended that a democratic, citizen-led and transparent appointment of INEC chairman should actually be part of our electoral reform process because it is important to make it truly an independent umpire that will have the confidence of everybody, but the citizens and the political parties, which I think those are some of the issues that have not been passed through, and among others, which I'm sure will try to push around, is a process. And basically, I think our political elites must realize that the health of our democracy is when we have a process in place that can deliver a free, fair, and credible election. That even the international committee and all of us will actually say yes. The process is credible. The process is transparent. It's fair. It's one man, one vote, one woman, one vote. And that is actually what will bring in place good governance. Because when people know that they are fully elected, basically they will strive also to work for the people, and the people will have a lot of confidence in them. So I think it's about the totality of good governance that we are pushing for this reform, and you can see the credibility of the civil society allies and Labour that is involved in all of this. And globally, as I said, Labour remains a very strong pillar of democracy. So basically, we'll continue to push, and hopefully, I think our political elites must realize that this is actually something that will strengthen our democracy and something that will even address some of the challenges that we are passing through, the issues of insecurity, the issues of development. I think the totality of it is that the whole gamut of it can be accommodated in this electoral reform process.
Well, quite a number of laudable reforms are really being pushed, and one of them that really stands out is this idea of finishing all court cases before whoever is elected is sworn in. I know some people have questioned the practicality of that, but it is something that has really gained momentum in recent times, that court cases must be rounded off before elected appointees are sworn in. We also see this matter of electoral financing, but people have questioned how practical is it, you know, to put a cap on what it is that politicians can spend and who exactly is monitoring? Because INEC says they are overburdened, even with electoral offenses, you know, crimes committed around or on election day. INEC finds it a big burden, and they have already said, look, we should have another body that, you know, sees to the prosecution of that, because they cannot add it to their already big, let's say, list of things to do. So for you, some of these reforms which you're pushing for, especially the ones that still border around INEC, how confident are you that we won't just pass them into laws? Because sometimes we do have the laws, but there is no one body to seem to enforce these laws. So how optimistic are you that if it does sail through again, that we will be able to implement them as, you know, has been passed?
Yes. You know, in the reform that we think will be ideal, which also some of the issues you have highlighted about the issue of court cases are concluded before swearing in, and also the issue of electoral financing. Part of the recommendation of the Justice Way Electoral Committee report is the unbundling of INEC into more manageable and focused agencies. In fact, the establishment of the Electoral Offences Commission, which is still on board. And I think INEC, even in the last dispensation under Mahmoud, have actually pushed to have this agency. So when we unbundle INEC, it means that we will have agencies that will have a particular focus, especially this issue of electoral financing, which I think is very, very important. People borrow money to actually prosecute elections. Some actually sell their property. Some actually get funding from very questionable sources. So I think it's important for us to streamline all of this in the reform process in order to have a process that is seamless and a process that we can fully set is transparent. So I think for me, those are reforms that will look at it very critically. It will be subjected to public debates, and even at the National Assembly, it will actually be subjected to a lot of discussion. But I think all of these very firm reforms that we have referred to were actually in the Justice Way Electoral Committee. And time has come actually for us to revisit some of those things, because of the fact that we have seen that they have been part of our problem. You can see how people are buying votes openly. It has been a major issue. Even INEC has confirmed that the security agencies, EFCC and other agencies have confirmed the issue of using money actually to buy votes. It shouldn't be so. It shouldn't be for highest bidder. It should actually be people that are very credible. So it's important. We actually look again at the issue of electoral financing. That's why I think this is part of the whole gamut of reforms that the coalition is pushing for. And I think also the issue of making sure that the court cases are concluded. You have seen in many instances where the court will now come and make pronouncements maybe 2 years into a tenure, and a new person will be sworn in. And that have made the entire process to be disjointed. If it's 4 years and somebody have already benefited 2 years into the term, and then you are coming newly. So I think we need to look at all of these issues in order to make our process seamless, and importantly, it's an avenue to actually address emerging issues, because at the end of every election cycle, we'll identify issues and challenges that need to be addressed. And therefore, the reform process is actually meant to look at those issues which are challenging, and to try to provide solutions to address them, because problems are meant to be addressed, not to be swept over.
All right, comrade, we certainly will keep tabs with you, because we know that this is a matter that is developing, this issue of electoral reforms, and keeping tabs with it in the National Assembly is something that we certainly will do. So we have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and we wish you all the very best as you pursue these reforms.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a reform for all Nigerians, so we will pursue those reforms to make our electoral process very credible.
Comrade Ayuba Waba is the former president of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Well, we'll be switching to another issue now, or shall I say a list of issues, as we will be tracking current events with Mr. Laolu Akonde after this break. Please stay with us.
Let me tell you where Tinubu should have looked for forces to quell that insurrection. Right here in Lagos, right here, or in Abuja perhaps, I don't know. But there was no need to call the military or the Air Force. I'll tell you what happened. On one of my home visits, this about 2 months ago, I was coming out of a hotel and I saw what looked like a film set. And I said, oh, they're shooting a film. That was on the grounds of this hotel. And a young man detached himself from the actors, came over and greeted me, very polite, very nice young man. And I said, are you shooting somebody? I said, I'm just joking. Are you shooting a film? He said, no. And I looked around. There was nearly a whole battalion occupying that, the grounds of that hotel, in Ikoyi, right here. So I got back in my car and I asked the driver who that young man was. And he told me. And I saw this SWAT team, a mixture. They were at least heavily armed, at least some 15 or so heavily armed to the teeth security personnel. Looked sufficient to take over a small country, neighboring city like Benin. And I think the next time the president should just call and say, Sheyi, go and quell the rebellion over there. So next time there's an insurrection, I think the president should just call that young man and say, go and put down those stupid people there. You have enough troops under your command, so don't bother me with all these security issues any longer. Let's not overdo things.
Well, you heard the words of Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka there, firing shots at what he saw was a battalion. You heard him. His words, not mine. Well, we're being joined now by Mr. Laolu Akonde, who is a former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources, to take a look at some of the things, some of the events that have transpired over the last 1 week. And this was topping the charts in terms of some of the discussions that were going on social media. This made the, let's say, the list of things that came up. And then we saw it escalate into, you know, some matter for authority figures to speak on. First, Senator Abdul Ningi raising this matter on the floor of the National Assembly, saying, look, my one single orderly I've had for years, you know, was taken away from me, ranking senator. I don't have a problem with it. Let it just be done equally across board. And it would seem that while he was raising that, the president was also raising, you know, was reiterating his earlier order. It's unclear if it's as a result of what Professor Wole Soyinka had said. Maybe this is a signal to whoever is whom it may concern, that when I said it, I meant across board. It did not matter whether it was my... I don't know what your reading of it was, but this is what we have noticed in the last couple of days, and why we would see such a situation in spite of what the president had earlier said.
Right. Well, okay, so quite a few issues to unpack. I think clearly the presidential directive to withdraw police from VIPs and VVIPs, I imagine that it's in progress. Practically, it will have to take a little while for it to be completely implemented. I don't think that, you know, I've spoken to quite a few security experts, including, you know, current police officers. I don't think it's something that you can do so swiftly, you know, according to them. But I think what incurred...
Why not?
Well, you know, because, you know, there are also specific instances where people were given, for instance, police protection because of the fact that they are exposed to threats, because they had documented, you know, circumstances. Some of them are even foreign investors, you know, people doing business and who considered having that kind of protection as some of the incentives, you know. So it's fairly complicated. But I have said before that, look, we need to do what the president has said. I think the president is right, that, you know, police should be more focused on securing the community. But I think we may need a little bit more of a transition, because even when you withdraw, you know, and you know, I've been speaking with some of them, say, well, even when you withdraw those, I think the IDP said about 12,000, are they ready? You know, are they immediately ready to be deployed? You know, do they have the motivation? Do they have the equipment? You know, and all the other things? Are they even trained? You know, so you know, I mean, I've got a bit of feedback from the police authorities to say that this thing is going to take a little while. What I think is important is to pursue that presidential declaration to say that, look, we need police, you know, to really go and secure communities, especially in those ungoverned states. But I don't think it's going to happen as quickly as many of us expect. But to the extent that it can go on, that would seem to be, in my view, what is right. The other question is the readiness of the civil defense to take over that responsibility. You know, so these are very quite interesting conversation. But I wanted to also comment on you know, what seemed to have been called the wrath of the Nobel laureate, their elder statesman and prof. Clearly, you know, the president's directive ought to also affect, you know, even his own son, you know. But my point about what Prof described, the kind of number of, I think he said he counted about 15, you know, soldiers or security men, and then a long convoy. It is part of the excesses of the presidential system. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria, you know. I was just reading up on this, and it turns out that Baron Trump, the son of the U.S. president who is schooling in New York, you know, has as much as 30, you know, Secret Service people around him in his school in NYU, causing the same kind of wrath, and I mean, incurring the wrath of the people, just like, you know, the wrath of Professor Soyinka was incurred, seeing Sheyi with that number of security. So this is part of the stuff that happens when we have a presidential system. It's not unusual, and I don't think that Professor Soyinka was saying that Sheyi shouldn't be protected, but he was saying that, look, we have to find a way to do this thing moderately, not to overdo things, which is a very legitimate point. But my greater point is that, look, this is why we need to terminate the presidential system. We don't need a presidential system. The presidential system is too expensive beyond all the other things. It allows the president to be cocooned in the villa. He doesn't have to engage with anybody if he doesn't want to. That system is not useful for us. And this is one example. The kind of excesses that it allows and that it condones, it's not, we don't have the luxury of all of those things. You know, so the final point is that on the matter, yes, we should have the police to secure the community, but it will require a lot more. So that policy cannot stand alone. It must include the fact that what are we doing to mobilize those police people, because many of them get some kind of welfare. You know, when they do those VIP, VVIP, you know, they get some welfare, you know, additional to what they've been taking before, and what their official returns are. You know, so when you move them out, you know, there must be a commensurate way to keep their morale going, and then they also have to be well trained in order to be able to do the job that they ought to do. I agree with the president, but it will take a lot more in terms of planning.
Well, I know that the National Assembly, especially the House of Reps, has sought clarity on this matter, because they make a differentiation between public officials and VIPs, and they think that there needs to be clarity on that particular matter. But let's not flog this particular horse too much. Let's go to another matter which also came up during the week, which we saw the defection of, I want to say perhaps the official defection. It was already in the wings. But I think for a number of people, what has come as a surprise is the words that the governor of the state has been uttering, the defection of the governor of River State now, talking about people who were suffering with him. This is a show of gratitude, right. You know, and he's not doing corner support. And some people are wondering, okay, are you firing shots?
Who is doing corner support?
Who is doing corner support? So, I mean, I don't know what your reading of the situation was, because for a number of political watchers, they had already said this was something that was going to happen eventually. Yeah. They had seen it coming, but the manner in which it is coming now, they're wondering whether it's carrying the same meaning as when they had predicted this was going to happen. What's your reading?
Well, you know, I think you are right that, you know, people would not be surprised that Fubara has eventually joined APC. I think the handwriting was very clear on the wall, especially, you know, I think last week when you found that majority of the members of the State House of Assembly also moved over to APC. What I am not sure of in this case, and I guess we will find out in the days ahead, is where is Nyesom Wike in all of this? When the members of the State House of Assembly, you know, indicated that they were moving over to APC, not all of them, but majority of them, Mr. Wike said that that he didn't tell him, you know. Quite frankly, I don't know whether to believe that or not. You know, it's very unclear to me. Because it will seem to be more orchestrated than something that we just than an happenstance, you know. So it's still forgive. You know, we don't know exactly what is going on, but we know that with the governor Fubara going over to APC and making a big show of it, and what is, you know, is what yesterday, you know, is clearly trying to still assert himself as the governor, and that his own support of the president is not, doesn't have K-leg. Many people have said of Nyesom Wike, who is clearly also supporting the president, but one leg in PDP, one leg inside APC government, leaves a lot of worries and concern and doubts, even among the people in the villa. You know, that, yeah, of course, we know that you are rooting for the president, but you are not leaving PDP. Some say that he's trying to help help destroy PDP ultimately. You know, so you know, we have to still watch how this affects Nyesom Wike. But to the fact that that River State is APC, I think that one is clear already.
Ayo.
Thank you, Markwe. One issue that I'd like you to speak on, I know that it's something, we spoke about it earlier, this whole police orderly thing, Mr. Akonde. I'm wondering, you know, what is your take on it, particularly in the area where people are talking about, okay, we need to segregate between VIPs and public officials and all of that. And one is wondering exactly how many of them are we going to need. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think that at a time when we are having this very serious recurrence of insecurity across the country, we need to fall back more on the police. Because when you look at the whole terrain, you know, when the military gets to a place and, you know, recover the territory, I don't think the military has the training or the orientation to stay there, you know, to keep the peace, you know. So we need police, well-trained police people to keep the peace. And so, in the light of that, like we have said, the president is right to say that, look, let me get all the police people doing their core functions, and then we will have the Civil Defense Corps to do the protection for public officials and VVIPs. Now, according to the president, the civil defense people are also armed and well trained. So I think we're going to have a period of transition from moving that protection from the police to the VVIP. There are those in the police who have said that, look, if you continue with this policy, if you withdraw the police from businesses, from some VIPs, they will be exposed to kidnapping. It will affect business community. It will affect the economy. You know, and those debates are going on as we speak, even inside government circles. But I think, in my view, if the NSCDC, the Civil Defense Corps, if they can do the job indeed, and they are also armed, as the president has said, it would be useful to have the police do the core policing of especially those ungoverned spaces. If that were possible, if they are sufficiently motivated, if their welfare is taken care of, if their training is taken care of, if they are properly kitted and they have equipment to do it, those are the bigger questions that must be answered as this transition is in progress.
Two other issues around that. One is the issue of state police, which I think everyone is on all fours about now. And the other leg to that conversation is private security. We hosted someone in the private security space in Nigeria recently, you know, on one of our programs. And one of the things that she was saying that, look, we need to be empowered to do whatever we need to do. You can disintegrate, you can regulate the kind of weapons we would use. We probably don't even have to carry lethal weapons. But let us be able to provide the kind of services that we need for those businesses that you spoke about and some of the VIPs that can actually afford some of these private security organizations, which probably sometimes are even better kitted than some of our regulars. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, I mean, certainly, even in developed climes, you know, like the United States, you know, you have a good number of private security organizations protecting especially businesses, you know, and in certain instances, some of them are armed. You know, in other instances, they are not armed, but they are uniformed, you know. So I think, you know, it's also an opportunity for us to see how we can properly develop, you know, into that kind of situation where you have, you know, private organizations complementing the work of the law enforcement agencies. The bottom line, Ayo, is that this is an important transition, you know, and I think a lot of balls are in the air. You remember that previously the president had also instructed, you know, that I think it was through NEC that they should take care of the training facilities of the police, you know, so that, you know, that there can be better training, and then more policemen are going to be hired and then trained. So it's something, like I said, that is going to take some time for it to truly evolve to where we want it to be. But what I see happening is that you're going to have more policemen. We have to recruit more policemen and train more policemen. And then the policemen that are being withdrawn from the VVIPs and from people who have businesses, I think that has to be done cautiously so that we don't expose some legitimate circumstances where people, you know, who are investors, foreign investors or businesses, or people whose lives have been threatened, where they don't become the casualty from this transition. So it's something that has to be, we must have an overall approach. And I think the Inspector General of Police ought to be doing that and advising the president as to the pace of this. But we need to increase the number of boots on the ground, whether it be police, whether it be Civil Defense Corps, or whether it be private security. All of those things have to come together, and we have to have a fair balance. Well-trained, well-motivated, and properly kitted.
Well, unfortunately, we do not even have time to talk about developments in Osun, because it wasn't just Governor Fubara who defected to the APC. Governor Adeleke also defected to the Accord Party, and then we also saw that video which had made the round of the First Lady, and then the return of 100 children from the school in Papiri, and the fact that we still have about 156 more still in detention. I mean, quite a lot to really digest in 1 week, but I believe that you'll be doing the rest on Inside Sources. Mr. Laulu Akonde is former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources, which you can catch tomorrow, Friday as well as Sunday. Thank you once more for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
That's where we draw the curtain today, this beautiful Thursday morning. Thank you for being a part of the program. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
I don't know whether it's going to be a wet day in Lagos, but it definitely has rained. I'm Maya Makide. Enjoy the rest of your day.